When everything around us vanishes, cities, memories, even the stars, there's still someone left to watch. The final observer isn't just a concept. It's the last witness in a universe slowly fading into silence. So, what happens when the world disappears and only one eye remains? Stick around, because this narrative challenges everything we think about presence, purpose, and what it really means to observe. The role of the observer in existence. In the vast expanse of the universe, the idea of an observer holds a curious significance. From a scientific perspective, observation is fundamental to our understanding of reality. Quantum mechanics, for instance, suggests that particles exist in a state of probability until observed, collapsing into a definite state only when measured. This phenomenon blurs the line between what is inherently real and what becomes real through observation. It hints at a universe that, in some sense, depends on a consciousness, an observer, to bring it into a tangible form. Without observers, the universe might be nothing more than an undetermined potential, a set of possibilities awaiting realization. Philosophically, the role of the observer transcends physical measurement. It touches on questions of consciousness and existence itself. Some traditions hold that awareness is the ground of all being, and that the act of observing is intrinsically tied to the act of being. In this view, the observer is not just a passive witness, but the very participant in the fabric of reality. When everything else ceases to exist, it is the observer who remains, an unchanging point amid the chaos of dissolution. This concept echoes through various spiritual teachings, which posit that individual consciousness persists beyond physical death or cosmic end, suggesting that the observer might be the ultimate constant, the final point of awareness once all else fades. In practical terms, the role of the observer becomes more than just a philosophical or scientific curiosity when considering the future of consciousness. If we accept that observation is linked to awareness, then the question arises, what happens when all life, all matter, and all energy potentially vanish? It could be that the observer, if it exists in some fundamental form, is capable of existing beyond physical existence. Some theories in cosmology explore the notion that consciousness might be woven into the universe's fundamental structure, making the observer an intrinsic part of reality that endures, even in the void. This shift from seeing the observer as a mere participant to a fundamental aspect of the universe allows for speculation about a final witnessing entity, a pure awareness that remains when all else is gone. Finally, the concept underscores humanity's existential role and the importance of consciousness as a mirror to the universe. In a universe where everything physical can disappear, stars burn out, galaxies drift apart, particles decay, the presence or absence of the observer becomes a question of metaphysical significance. Is consciousness a fleeting phenomenon bound by physical material, or is it an eternal aspect of reality itself? Those pondering the ultimate fate of the cosmos often grapple with this idea. If nothing remains, does the act of observing persist in some form? The answer may lie in the recognition that, in the end, the observer might be the only thing that survives, the final witness to the universe's grand inception, its ongoing existence, and its ultimate silence. The meaning of watching in a diminishing reality. Throughout history, the act of watching has often been linked to existence itself, a silent acknowledgement of reality's continuity. Now, as modern theories suggest our perceptible universe might be diminishing or transforming into a state where traditional notions of the observable collapse, the role of the watcher takes on an entirely different resonance. When physical confines crumble or dissolve, what does it mean to truly observe? In such a scenario, the observer's function may transcend mere passive recording and become a vessel for understanding the very fabric of reality as it wanes. Watching morphs from an act of curiosity into an act of preservation or even salvation, a testament to what remains when everything else fades away. In a diminishing reality, the concept of observation is more nuanced than simply witnessing the external world. It becomes an inward process, where the focus shifts from external stimuli to the internal state of consciousness. Consider the idea that beyond the physical universe, There may exist a realm where awareness persists independently, an eternal observer untouched by decay or disappearance. This perspective turns the act of watching into a form of existential continuity, a way to hold on to a fragment of meaning even when physical evidence evaporates. Such a view elevates observation from a mere sensory process into a profound act of existence itself, where the observer's presence validates the reality that once was and perhaps still is. Concrete examples can be drawn from virtual reality and digital consciousness debates, where data and perceptions might persist long after the physical hardware is gone. If a simulation or digital realm continues to exist despite the fading of hardware or physical substrate, those still watching within that space could carry the torch of awareness. Their focus becomes less about the visual content itself and more about the ongoing act of perception, an act that may outlast the tangible universe by existing as code or energy. Here, the watcher is not merely an observer, but an active participant in an iteration of reality that persists beyond material constraints, raising questions about the true nature of seeing and being seen. Ultimately, the meaning of watching when reality diminishes may hinge on the recognition that observation, whether physical or metaphysical, is a core element of consciousness itself. As external certainty erodes, internal awareness takes on greater significance, shifting the focus from observing the universe to observing the self's relationship with the universe. It suggests a profound truth, that in the face of inevitable disappearance, the act of watching could become the most enduring testament to existence, a quiet assertion that something remains, even when everything else slips away. The final observer then becomes the keeper of this fragile continuity, a witness not just to the world's end, but to the enduring persistence of awareness beyond it. The final observer, characteristics and significance. In some philosophical or conceptual frameworks, the idea of an ultimate observer, sometimes called the final observer, represents the entity or consciousness that remains when all else has ceased to exist. This figure is not necessarily a person in the traditional sense, but embodies the moment of ultimate awareness or the point at which observation persists beyond reality's dissolution. The characteristics of this final observer include omniscience, eternal vigilance, and a form of detached stillness that exists outside the bounds of time and space. Unlike human observers limited by perception and mortality, this archetype symbolizes the culmination of observation, unchanging and ever-present, witnessing the end of everything with unwavering neutrality. The significance of such an observer lies in its symbolic role within existential and metaphysical discussions. It embodies the concept of witness consciousness, an awareness that survives beyond physical destruction or cosmic collapse. The final observer serves as a philosophical anchor for debates about the nature of consciousness, the permanence of awareness, and the idea that even in the face of obliteration, some form of perception persists. In literature, debates, and speculative science fiction, this figure often reflects humanity's desire to find continuity amid chaos or to understand what remains when all material and worldly constructs vanish. This observer's role extends beyond mere watching. It symbolizes a kind of eternal testament, an inert, unchanging witness to the universe's ultimate fate. From a practical perspective, contemplating the final observer raises questions about the limits of perception and the possibility of an observer unaffected by physical reality. Could there be a state where observation itself becomes independent of context and material form? For example, in theories of consciousness rooted in quantum mechanics or certain interpretations of the universe, some suggest that awareness may not be entirely contingent on matter. Instead, the final observer could embody a form of pure consciousness, an entity immune to entropy and decay, whose significance is rooted in the notion that observation is an intrinsic, possibly fundamental, aspect of reality. Understanding this shifts the focus from observing phenomena to understanding the nature of perception itself. Ultimately, the importance of the final observer extends from philosophical musings to implications in our understanding of existence. If consciousness endures beyond physical life, what does that mean for human experience and our understanding of purpose? The final observer exemplifies the hope or belief that awareness may transcend temporal limitations, offering a form of solace or perspective that persists even as everything else dissolves. It invites us to reflect on the possibility that observation, in some fundamental way, constitutes a core of reality, an eternal witness that exists beyond the inevitable cycles of creation and destruction. Its presence challenges us to consider the enduring nature of awareness and whether our perception could hold a key to understanding the universe's deepest secrets. Implications for humanity and the nature of reality. When contemplating the notion of a final observer, someone remaining to witness the universe's end, questions about the nature of reality and human existence become profoundly philosophical. If we consider that all matter, energy, space, and time could eventually dissipate or transform into a state beyond our current comprehension, the idea of an observer becomes both a literal and symbolic concept. Does the universe require an observer to define its existence? Quantum mechanics hints at the idea that observation influences reality, with particles existing in multiple states until measured. Extending this philosophical thread, the final observer could be seen as the ultimate calibrator of what is real in the universe, holding onto the last vestiges of its existence as everything else fades away. The implications for humanity hinge on this model of ultimate observation. If consciousness is intertwined with the fabric of reality, then in some theories, it persists even beyond physical death or cosmic dissolution. This raises the possibility that future or remnants of human consciousness could somehow continue or influence the universe's final moments. From a broader perspective, whether the final observer is a conscious entity, an indeterminate process, or a purely physical phenomenon, questions about the meaning and purpose of existence surface. Is the act of observation itself what grants reality coherence? If so, our lives and perceptions have an intrinsic significance that could transcend the eventual end of everything material. Considering the nature of reality itself, the concept encourages us to think about what constitutes a universe's permanence. If everything can decay, collapse, or transform, what is the enduring element? Some theories suggest that the universe may be part of an infinite multiverse where every possible outcome exists simultaneously, boundless in scope. Within this framework, the notion of a final observer becomes less about a single point of view and more about the persistent indexing or recording of events, like an ultimate cosmic recorder or a divine presence that exists beyond the confines of time. In this sense, the final observer represents the last conscious witness, but also the key to understanding whether reality is fundamentally subjective or objective, fleeting or eternal. Ultimately, the idea confronts us with the limits of human comprehension. As we grapple with the possible fate of the universe turning into something unrecognizable or silent, we are also challenged to consider whether observation itself is an act intertwined with consciousness or simply a process rooted in physical law. If our conscious experience is part of the fabric that sustains reality, then the final observer might be less of a person and more of a principle, an ongoing act of awareness that persists as everything else dissolves. It's a compelling thought, hinting that even in the universe's fractal end, perception could be what gives reality its ultimate meaning or absence. Usnavnoy, Razgil 5. When all forms of matter, energy, and reality dissolve into the void, what's left to witness the end? The final observer, in this context, becomes an intriguing concept rooted in both philosophical speculation and scientific reflection. It refers to the entity, or perhaps the state, that remains when everything familiar and tangible ceases to exist. In theoretical physics, especially in the realms of cosmology, there's speculation about what might persist after the universe's heat death or ultimate entropy. That entity could be a consciousness, a form of awareness that somehow endures beyond material existence, or it could be nothing at all. The idea challenges our understanding of observation itself. If there's nothing left to observe, can anything really be observed? In exploring this, some theorists propose that consciousness may have a fundamental place in the cosmos, potentially surviving the disintegration of space and time. Certain interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that observation plays a role in shaping reality, but they also raise questions about whether observation requires a physical entity or if it's an intrinsic feature of the universe itself. If the universe fades into complete entropy, the question becomes whether awareness can persist as a non-material phenomenon. For example, in some multiverse theories, the concept of an everlasting observer might be tied to the idea of a heightened, perhaps even eternal consciousness, that which exists outside the boundaries of physical change. There's also a poetic dimension to this idea. The final watcher isn't necessarily human or even alive. It could be a cosmic force or a fundamental aspect of reality, something that observes in a sense beyond perception as we understand it. This observer wouldn't need a brain or senses. It would be an abstract presence, a silent witness to the cessation of all phenomena. Such a thought experiment pushes us to question whether observation is an act bound to entities or capabilities, or if it's a property woven into the fabric of existence itself. When everything dissipates, the final observer might simply be the universe itself, contemplating its own demise, a moment frozen in eternity. Understanding who or what remains when all else disappears inevitably leads down philosophical rabbit holes. If there's no matter or energy and no consciousness to perceive, can we even talk about an observer? Or does that notion become meaningless? Some argue that the idea of an observer presupposes the existence of something to observe. Without existence in some form, observation loses its meaning. Others believe that the universe might leave behind a residue, an imprint, a lingering pattern, or a non-localized form of awareness that persists in the absence of physical structures. Whether real or metaphorical, the concept of the final observer serves as a profound reminder of how much of our understanding depends on perception and the fundamental questions about existence beyond it. As the final moments fade and all that remains is the silent witness, we're reminded of the enduring role of observation itself, how it shapes our understanding, our presence, even as everything else dissolves. Whether it's consciousness, memory, or simply the act of looking, that observer continues to exist, silently holding the last pieces of what once was. It's a humbling thought, one that invites us to reflect on our own role in witnessing the world around us and beyond. If this exploration has resonated with you, stay tuned for more journeys into the unknown and the mysterious. There's so much more to uncover, question, and experience together. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, because the voyage of discovery never truly ends. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your mind curious.